Well, let's talk now to our guest, Stefan Wolff, who's Professor of International Security at the University of Birmingham. Professor, welcome back. I want to ask you, first of all, I wonder, would a withdrawal to pre-invasion borders be viable for Russia?
I think it will be very hard to tell whether Russia will indeed be willing to withdraw that far. I think for the moment, the Russians are still thinking that they can make significant territorial gains, in particular around the Donbas area, as your correspondent earlier reported. But I also think it would be such a significant climb down for Vladimir Putin to do that the pressure really has to be increased by Ukraine and by the West to force him to withdraw that far.
I want to ask you about the significance of the speech given to the think tank by Ukraine's president last night. What motivated the peace terms President Zelensky outlined last night?
Well, I think it's a slight difference between what the British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss only said a couple of days earlier, when she talked about really pushing Russia out of all of Ukraine, including Crimea. I think President Zelensky, to some extent, signaled a slightly softer line here, which does not mean that Ukraine's long-term goals aren't, of course, restoration of its complete territorial integrity and sovereignty over all these areas that Russia has taken since 2014. But it also signals, in my view, that he is more willing to actually enter into negotiations with Russia. Obviously, there have been diplomatic efforts going on around Mariupol, and we should also not underestimate the fact that we had a Security Council statement the other day where all the major powers, all the veto-holding powers in the Security Council, including Russia, expressed concern over international peace and security in relation to Ukraine, which again, I think, sort of testifies to the efforts of the Secretary General of the UN to really get negotiations going here between the two sides to stop the rather senseless killing on the ground.
2 months into this invasion of Ukraine, or as Russia would describe it, this special military operation, how would you characterize the progress made by Russia so far?
Very disappointing from the Russian perspective, I think. I mean, if you remember, I mean, in the early days of the war, they were very close to Kiev, but then had to withdraw from that. They then subsequently threw all their military efforts into Donbas, but really have not been able to make many significant advances there. Yes, they are still holding large parts of Kherson Oblast and areas to the north of Lugansk beyond what they were controlling on the 23rd of February. But it's certainly not the kind of gains that Vladimir Putin, I think, was hoping that he could boast about on Victory Day on Monday.
Professor, thanks very much indeed for your analysis. That's Professor Stefan Wolff from the University of Birmingham.